In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to take pre-published modules and incorporate them into your homebrew D&D games. Greetings folks, I'm Anto, and a whole bunch of people over the years have asked how I approach adding official modules, previously published materials into a homebrew game. I homebrew pretty much everything, and occasionally something will come out that I think that is really cool. I want to incorporate that into my game, and a lot of people ask, how do I take that previously published material and meld it into the things I've established in my own homebrew world? So that's what we're going to do today, thanks to this video's sponsor, Amazing Encounters and Places, Volume 1 by CZ RPG. Now this is the example that I'm going to use to show you how I would take something that's already published and apply it to my own homebrew setting, and kind of the roadblocks that get created, what problems I need to solve to do that, and everything that comes along with it. So to do that, we're going to be using the example of the Sky Isles. Now this is the preview packet available for the Amazing Encounters and Places Kickstarter. You can go over to their Kickstarter page, it will be linked in the description below, and check out this full PDF because it's got an entire location and a short adventure arc all included in it. So it's a perfect example to use to show you how I would take this and apply it to my own homebrew setting. The first thing that I want to do to fit this into my homebrew world is obviously I need to read through it and see what the kind of vibe is in this previously published material, see if anything jumps out at me as being able to use it right away. So I've already gone ahead and read through most of this sample packet, everything that I think we're going to need for this video today, and I've already got a few ideas. So this preview packet is the Sky Isles. It's a set of floating islands, and there's kind of a monk group that lives there, and they're fighting against a demon. Now that's all really cool stuff, and it will fit into most worlds. That's the point of this particular Kickstarter, to give you locations that you can pick up and drop anywhere, but we still have to think about some things. One of the things that jumped out to me the most about this particular setting is that it's got a very East Asian kind of Japanese flavour to it. There are monks, there are yokai, there's a lot of those little elements that give it that kind of feel of being inspired by East Asian cultures. Now when I go over to my world here, this is the world of Ishtar. This is where Ashk is based, and I've done a whole bunch of videos on Ashk. I've also explored that kind of East Asian influence in the realm of Sangal. I've got a bunch of videos talking about that. So somewhere around here would probably be the perfect place to put this location. And that's the first thing that you need to decide when you're taking previously published work and putting it into your homebrew setting. Where are you going to put it? Because you want to look at the influences of the piece that you're drawing from, as well as the influences of your world, and see if there's anywhere that there's a natural kind of blending point of the two, like there is with the East Asian influence of Sangal and the Sky Isles. So I want to include the Sky Isles somewhere around Sangal. It doesn't have to be in this country, but somewhere close enough that it would make sense that there's similar cultural elements to kind of explain why there's these similarities. Now, all of the work that I'm going to be doing today is in Legend Keeper, but the principles that I'm going to show you will apply whether you're using another program like World Anvil, whether you're using Google Docs, handwritten notes. The process is all going to be the same. I'm just using Legend Keeper because it's what I'm familiar with and I can work quickly in it. So what I want to do is I want to start by looking at the region around Sangal, which is my East Asian inspired kind of continent, and figure out where I want these Sky Isles to be. Now I've already got several island chains around Sangal that I could use, but I think what I want to do, because the lore around this island mentions the fact that it's a secluded and kind of secretive place, I don't want to use some of the existing landforms on my map to represent it, because it's supposed to be a secret place. So instead what I think I'm going to do is, here on this little peninsula here, I like the idea that this would be close enough to Sangal to have cultural similarities, but far enough away that we can play around with it and we don't have to vastly impact the things we've already written for our homebrew world. Because that's another thing that you want to consider when you're incorporating these things, is how is including the information from this published module going to change your world. So in our case, if we put these floating islands in the middle of an existing landmass right above Sengal, that's going to affect the history of that part of the world significantly, because even if they are a secret, things in that region of the world will happen differently because of their presence. So by moving them off land and kind of putting them around here somewhere above the ocean, the module makes reference that you have to travel to kind of the highest mountain in the region and then follow the kind of floating islands along to get to the main portion of the Sky Isles. So if we've got a mountain range here and this island here, I think if we do it in the ocean around here, that is going to be perfect for our situation. So I'm going to go ahead and drop a pin location for the Sky Isles there. I'm going to create the pin and I'm going to make it look like all my other pins for locations, so a little flag. And then when I zoom out, you can see that that is added there. I click on that, that gives us our starting page where we're going to work from for everything else involved in porting over this module. So the way I like to approach things when I'm adapting pre-existing work is I like to start from quite a visual standpoint. So included in this sample PDF is a map of the Sky Isles, and that is where I'm going to start. I'm going to take that map, put it into Legend Keeper, and then start building on top of that and thinking about the ways in which I can incorporate elements from my world into the lore, the existing lore of this module. Think about how I can incorporate the lore of the module into my world. So I've gone ahead and thrown in the map for the Sky Isles here, and you can see the first thing that I notice is that this map shows that this is an area that is actually above land and that the mountains reach up, and you can see kind of land beneath it. So what I want to do is I want to jump back over to the world, and I just want to move where those Sky Isles are going to be. So I'm going to turn on pin dragging, and I'm just going to drag it over this little island here because I have nothing written for that island. It's close enough to our existing kind of cultural reference, and we know that it's near a mountain chain, so it's easy enough to have this little island just represent the Sky Isles, and then go ahead and make sure that we can't drag the pins again. And then we can click through into the map and we're presented with the region. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to look at this map, see what locations are mentioned on it. We've got the Hunt, Neverdark, the Skywalk, and the Way Up. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to make pins for each of them. So the Way Up, the Skywalk, Neverdark, which is our principal kind of location, our principal town, and then the Hunt. Okay, so we've got some locations to work with here. We've got our pins, we've got some pages. Now we can start diving into the process of melding the pre-existing published material with the homebrew material. So we're going to dive back into the PDF here, and then we are going to jump on over to the section talking about the history and the lore of the Sky Isles. So we're going to start with this quick intro, which just gives a setup for what this product is. As I said, the Amazing Encounters and Places Kickstarter is the perfect example for doing something like this because everything is designed to be fit into your own games. So you can see that you get some lore for each location, the overarching plot for a small adventure set there, and then some scalable encounters. So almost everything here is presented with multiple options for different tiers of play, which means that you can use these locations no matter what level your players are. This particular one is recommended for tier 3. That is where my players are anyway. They are currently level 11, 9, 10. They're somewhere around. I can't actually remember what level they are. They're around level 10. They're in tier 3. So the Sky Isles is going to be perfect for that. So the next step is to read through kind of this lore aspect and see how we can bring in different elements of our homebrew world and meld them together. So the premise of this location is that it is a set of floating islands, and there is this monastic tradition called the Phoenix monks that have fled kind of persecution by a demon, ended up in these Sky Islands, and they've built their home there. And this demon is planning on trying to catch up to them and try and take another stab at destroying them. Now, the thing that drew me to this the most is the fact that it references these Phoenix monks. This is something that I can easily adapt to my own homebrew setting. So in my last campaign, which was set in a different location in my homebrew world, it was set in the nation of Valoroth, one of the players was a monk, and as part of their storyline, they ended up joining this ancient monastic tradition, and in the end, in kind of the climax of the campaign, they became a phoenix. So I have an immediate tie for how to take that group of Phoenix monks and tie it into my world. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and jump over to the wiki. So everything with the Sky Isles is here in the wiki. Everything that we do to incorporate this, I'm going to keep it contained to there so it's all in one place. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and make a new page here. Phoenix monks. And create a page for our Phoenix monks. And to start with, I'm just going to make a note that these are descended from Ao. Ao was the player character that was a monk that became the Phoenix, and this tradition is going to have kind of followed down through her line. So next thing that we want to do is we want to look at what the story that this module is telling is, and whether that fits into our homebrew world. So the story of this is that there is a cat demon, a Bake Neko, a yokai, a cat demon that is kind of hellbent on burning these Phoenix monks. They fled after their previous home was destroyed, and then in fleeing they kind of took up this Phoenix tradition, and now this cat demon is back and wants to finish the job essentially. So I want to look and see whether there's any existing characters in my world that I could use as a reference for this cat demon who could serve in place of them, because that's one of the things I will often do when I'm incorporating kind of published material into my homebrew setting, is I will kind of change names or change intentions of some of the characters in there and tie it more specifically into my homebrew world. So in this overarching plot section, it talks about Sethlock, who is the demon who's intent on destroying the order of the Phoenix monks, and it references kind of a little bit of their background. Upon reading it, there's nothing that jumps out at me as being able to tie it to any of my existing kind of homebrew demons, which means that I can just use it wholesale. One thing I've done in the past is to just simply change a name can go a long way. For example, I am running an adventure at the minute that is going to culminate with the Tomb of Horrors, and I will probably have a video specifically on the Tomb of Horrors coming up. But the character that I have in that, the Acerarak villain, is going to be completely different to the published material, but I'm still going to use the name. So that's just one thing that you can do. Tweaking names can be a really easy way to kind of take some ownership of a previously published piece of material and bend it into your homebrew setting. So after reading through the overarching plot, immediately it doesn't seem as if the Sethlock, who's the main villain of this piece, would be related to any of the pre-existing characters in my world. At least not directly. Sethlock is a cat demon, and I have nothing like that in my current campaign setting. But what I do have in the background related to the order of monks that resulted in this character becoming a phoenix is a race of creatures called the Akmiri. Now, the Akmiri are an ancient people. They were one of the first magically technological people. They had a vast empire, and then almost all of them died in a great cataclysm. The Akmiri are one of the groups of people that I use fairly frequently if I need to explain an element that doesn't make sense. Like floating islands is a great example. How do the islands end up floating? Well, the Akmiri are kind of the dead empire responsible for so much magic and technology. It's easy to use them as the reason that these islands are floating and the reason that this magic kind of exists. Now, as I'm reading through this, I think that Sethlock, rather than being a cat demon specifically for me, would make more sense as being a corrupted Akmiri spirit, because in my setting, when the Akmiri people were destroyed, those that remained as kind of beings of pure energy. They have no physical form, and they kind of inhabit other things. So I like the idea of Sethlock being this corrupt Akmiri who is working in opposition to the Phoenix monks, but takes the form of this black cat, of this omen of ill fortune. So we're going to go ahead and do a couple things in terms of how we're going to make notes about this, how we're going to incorporate it into our homebrew world. So for the Phoenix monks, they're descended from Ao's monastic order. That's one thing that we need to note. And then we're going to go ahead in Sky Isles, and we're just going to make a Sky Isles beings page, just so that we've got a place to categorize all of our creatures. And then in our creatures, we're going to go ahead here and we're going to start adding information for Sethlock. And we're going to make a note in this Sethlock page before we start doing any kind of in-depth world building or anything with that. It's going to be a fallen Akmiri who takes the form of a black cat, because I want to keep as much from the base module as I can, because that limits my work. You know, if you change too much, it means that every time the module references something, you have to either correct that by writing it out or mentally correct it every time you come across it in the module, and that can take a lot of work. That's why in that example of Tomb of Horrors that I gave, that's why the kind of crazed Akmiri in that story is going to be a Serarak. It just makes things simpler. And then the next thing that we want to do is we want to copy some of the core information over. So for example, the Neverdark, we have some information on the Neverdark in the PDF, so we're going to go ahead and add that into our page here, just pretty it up a little bit. And then when we are in our map and we're looking at these locations, we can click on Neverdark and we get the information that we need come up there, just so that we don't have to keep switching between that and the PDF all the time. If you're running this with pen and paper notes, I would say you'd want to either photocopy the page or keep a picture of it, transcribe it. You want to keep your notes for locations bundled together so that it's easy to reference when you're running. And then we want to get all the information of all these locations. And then the next thing that I want to do, and probably the most important thing, I think, when you are adapting an existing module to fit into your homebrew world, is that you want multiple points throughout the module where you speak to kind of the themes of your campaign. So if you have a pre-existing world, you will have a lot of information about events that have passed, and whether you realize it or not, you'll probably have started to build up kind of a central style or theme throughout your games, and that's something that you want to adapt in for pre-published stuff as well. So for me, one of the things that I have found myself to be really interested in as a game master, and something that has come up multiple times in my campaigns, is this idea of corruption, of the nature of good and evil, of people starting out evil becoming good, people starting good becoming evil, and how power impacts that, and all of these things around the sort of corruption of good people into evil people. Now this particular module already has an element of that where it references the phoenix. It says here, the monks don't know, but Sethlock does. The golden phoenix has become corrupted, turning into a yokai itself. So that's one thing that I would want to really lean into and play around with when adapting this, is the idea that my players would know, and the people of my world know, that the phoenix is this great beacon of good. They will have witnessed the phoenix save a city full of people during a previous campaign. The phoenix fought this great kind of corrupt, spooky dragon outside of one of the cities, and the phoenix kind of gave its life at the end. And people, anyone that knows about the phoenix knows that it is a source of good. So having the idea that this phoenix has become corrupt, really interesting, plays in to the kind of themes that I incorporate into my games anyway. So what I would want to do is I want to go through this module and kind of see what references it makes to the Phoenix, what the story the module has in mind is, and whether or not I can adapt that. So the easiest way for me to do this is to just go ahead and search for the Phoenix specifically and then jump through. So there's 165 references to the Phoenix. We're going to jump ahead a little bit because I know that the Phoenix is referenced here. So we can see that at the end there's references to the Phoenix being summoned. Okay, so the fiery incantation. Caden tries to either use one of the characters in the sacrifice needed as part of the incantation, or where failing this, they sacrifice themselves. The goal is to summon the Phoenix and control it to help it fight against Sethlock. So we've got this idea that the Phoenix is being summoned to help fight against this demonic presence, and then having been tricked into believing the famed Golden Phoenix could be of help against the Bacan Echo, Caden has researched a way to bring forth the Phoenix under their control to achieve this powerful incantation. Huge bomb of fire, summon the Phoenix. So reading through, we can see that if they do summon the Phoenix is going to be hostile towards them. Now this module presents that as a foregone conclusion, and that doesn't fit with kind of my ideas of the themes of corruption here. I want, if the Golden Phoenix is going to be a major part of this kind of module and of this story, I don't want the players to feel like they have no impact on that. I don't want them to feel like, oh, we've done this thing that we thought was good, but because we had no other information and it turned out to be a bad thing. So instead, what I want to make note of is that I want to go in here and reference, if we make a new page for the Golden Phoenix, I want to make a note that Sethlock is trying to corrupt the Phoenix. And as part of my interpretation of this module, the goal would be, okay, the people of Neverdark need to fight against Sethlock, so their plan is to summon the Golden Phoenix. Sethlock has heard about this, and Sethlock's plan is also to summon the Golden Phoenix. So the way that I would run this instead is that the characters involved in the story are aware that Sethlock has returned, and to fight Sethlock they want to summon the Golden Phoenix. They discover the information about the ritual that will allow them to do that. Sethlock also will want to summon the Golden Phoenix because Sethlock knows that they don't. Whoever summons the Phoenix controls the Phoenix, and that would be the pivot point around the final confrontation. Because if we look at the final confrontation, it is all set up around this push and pull between Sethlock and the Phoenix, and the kind of players are the third party involved in that. So I much prefer the idea, and it fits in with the themes of my homebrew world much better if that kind of final encounter becomes an allegory for kind of corruption. So Sethlock is trying to corrupt this beacon of good, and the players are trying to make sure that it remains uncorrupted. So it's a minor change, and it wouldn't necessarily change a whole lot about it wouldn't change anything about the mechanics of the encounters. The maps would still all be the same, all of the stat blocks would still be the same, but you end up with something that fits, in this case, my world much better and makes a much bigger impact on what my players would already know about the world and what I've already established in my campaign setting. And that's the biggest thing about going through these pre-existing modules. You want to find points where you can say, right, okay, this is how it is in the module, but I know if I tweak it a little bit, I can make it fit in with the themes and the tone and the world that I have built up that much more. And there we have it. That's how I would adapt a pre-written module or adventure to fit into my homebrew setting. First up, you want to look at the locations presented within, see if there's anywhere that jumps out to you as being an obvious place to put them in your world, kind of on the map. If not, look at the cultural kind of references that are included. In our case, it was a lot of East Asian references, so I looked to an area around Senegal, which is a location I have made with similar cultural references. It keeps everything kind of neat and tidy together, makes it make sense. Then you want to look at kind of the mechanics of the world that you're introducing. So with this example, I was introducing the Sky Isles, a heavily magical area. Anytime I have kind of that level of high magic, I am able to explain it away with the Akmiri, that fallen empire that commanded incredible power and technological advancement. Then you look at the story overall and see if there's anything that you can do to bend that to fit better into your world. In our example here of the Sky Isles, we had that Phoenix order of monks who I knew could be related to a previous player character who was a monk and became a Phoenix, and then we had that corrupting spirit in the form of Sephok. In the module, Sephok is a cat demon. That doesn't fit really with my setting, so I made a change and decided that there would be a fallen Akmiri. They could easily be a demon. The important part here is how they interact with the rest of the world. By being a fallen Akmiri, in my setting, they have the kind of knowledge that would be necessary to bring about the plans that Sephok has. And then we look and see if there's anything we can do thematically to change it to fit in more with the style of game that you run or the kind of story that you're telling. So in the end of this particular module, there's kind of this back and forth of trying to summon a phoenix, and if you summon the phoenix, it fights against you. Now, I would make a very small change in that whoever summons the phoenix controls it, so that there can be this back and forth between the protagonist and the villain, both trying to accomplish the same immediate goal, and then the battle would play out a little bit differently depending on who won. And I want to say a huge thank you to CZ RPG for sponsoring this video and letting me use the Sky Isles as the example for kind of this process of adapting previously published works. Their Amazing Encounters and Places Kickstarter is running right now. It ends on November 25th. It's already fully funded and has started smashing down stretch goals, and it looks to be a really interesting product. One of the things that I really appreciated about it is the approach to flexibility that the preview took. It gives you information for how to run these things at different tiers of play, gives you suggestions for tweaks to make to stat blocks depending on what tier that you're running at and whether you're running it at level 1, which I really appreciate. And it's full of interesting and neutral enough lore that it does make it really easy, like we've done today, to adapt it to your own homebrew world. There's a whole bunch of different locations that are going to be included in this Kickstarter in the final book, and if you pledge, you also can get access to a massive amount of variant maps. So the book will include some default maps, some sunny day maps, but it also will include hundreds of variations of those, which is going to make it even easier for you to make these kind of encounters and these adventures your own. All the links to the Kickstarter will be down in the description below, so head over and check it out. Check out the sample pack, see if it's something that you're interested in, and let them know who sent you. I hope that this video has been helpful to you. If you've got any questions about adapting pre-published material into your homebrew world, throw them down in the comments below. But until next time, happy gaming.